to actually move forward, you have to take those risks, and that risk was to get out of that 20-year relationship and start a new one. We recalibrate our business all the time. We're constantly moving, constantly changing. So those 2 degrees at university are a waste of money. But anyway, we move on from that. We actually saw a growth from day one in making that call.
Wow.
Welcome to Not the Rob Bell Podcast, where we talk with business owners, marketers and professionals to extract what makes people and businesses successful.
Hey everyone, and thanks for tuning in to Not the Rob Bell Podcast. Today's guest, I've got Geoff Tilden from Raine and Horne. They're a local real estate that's been forging ahead, growing, building relationships, even during a tough market. We find out how and what they're doing now. Hey everyone, we anticipated this podcast as being a weekly event, but we thought with everything going on right now that twice weekly would be twice as good. So we might not hold this forever and we may go back to weekly, but enjoy the extra episodes right now. Thank you, Geoff, for coming and having a chat to us on the podcast. It's great to have you here.
Thank you.
And so I understand you guys are in a bit of a flux at the moment with COVID, but we don't really want to talk too much about COVID, but we will probably cross it a little bit later. Mm-hmm. But what I really wanted to chat to you about today is the extraordinary growth that you guys have seen over a 30-year career and 30 years of owning your own business. And that business is Raine and Horne, Gosford and East Gosford.
That's right.
And so I'd really like to first start, just understanding a little bit about where you started from in real estate and how you got into business and go from there.
Well, it started back in the early 80s, actually. So Sue, my wife and partner in the business, started in real estate in 1983, I think it was. And then I got caught up in it in 1985, working for a commercial industrial agency in the city. And that's where it all started from. And there were some people called Leishmans who bought out the Peter Brown Group. They were local bus company owners. So they took on the Peter Brown Group back in the early 80s and wanted Sue to come back and manage one of their offices for them. So that drew her back to Gosford, and she managed Gosford real estate. I was still down in Sydney doing commercial, industrial, and we had the stock market crash in 87. And I came back to Gosford in late 1990. And that's how it all started from a local perspective.
And so that's when you ventured out on your own
We did.
And so that was Gosford Real Estate back then?
It was. In 1990, we purchased Gosford Real Estate. At that stage, it was comprised of 3 people and us, the 2 of us. And it was a great start because Sue at the same time found out she was pregnant.
Good timing.
Good timing. So that was a great way to kick it off. So we mortgaged everything we owned and borrowed from everybody and started it. And then we had the recession that you had to have came as well in 1990. So Mr. Keating gave us a present to kick off our business career as well. So it was interesting times.
Because that was post the extraordinary interest rate period as well, wasn't it? That was sort of very late 80s.
Late 80s, we're at 18-19% interest.
And that's pretty extraordinary when you consider we're at, 1% now and actual borrowing capacity of around, 3 to 4 or somewhere there. And people are concerned about a 0.25%, 0.5%, 1% interest rate rise, but 18%, can you imagine a world like that right now?
Well, we were in it. That's how we started. We were at 18% when we borrowed for our first property.
Wow.
And we didn't know any different. So we always expected to be around that rate. So it was a lot of money going out.
I suppose it is all relative. So we're saying it's around 1990 and it's Gosford Real Estate at the time. Right. Mm-hmm. And so I know a little bit later you were part of the First National group as well. So did you sort of enter into that franchise?
We did. We stayed as an independent for a few years. Then we looked at joining First National. It was a marketing co-op, so it gave us an opportunity to give us a broader base, a better market penetration with a national name at that stage. So we stayed with them for just on 20 years. We were with First National.
Wow.
We found that towards the end it didn't suit us any longer. It hadn't progressed as fast as we wanted it to.
Sure.
So we then were actually considering going back to be an independent office, back to Gosford Real Estate, and the opportunity came up for us to join Raine and Horne, which was in 2011. So that's when we took the step to get into Raine and Horne Group.
That's an interesting transition. So did that franchise become available because someone local stepped away from the franchise?
Yeah. It was run by one fellow, for a guy called John Stewart. He had the business for over 20 years. He sold it to another person. They absolutely destroyed it.
Sure.
He did everything wrong you can do wrong within a 12-month period, and his business was closed down. So the opportunity for the franchise came up through that, and we believe that our name and Raine and Horne were good enough to get us back on an even track and get us going for the future. So that's why we ventured into Raine and Horne.
So it's quite a leap to go from one franchise group to another.
It certainly is.
How did you, even from a effort sort of requirement, but also a financially to rebrand, to to really shake things up? How did you sort of assess the pros and cons of coming out of First National and taking up Raine and Horne?
Well, at that stage, technology was coming through quite strongly in that period of time. Remembering that back in the 80s and 90s, like fax machines were new technology. And so it progressed from that point, from 1990 through to the 2000s, at an extremely quick rate. So we had to decide whether that group could keep up with what we wanted to do, with our expansion and what we had planned. And we were looking to find a franchise or a marketing group that could take us to that next level. And that was our driving focus to do that. It was a big change. We'd invested 20 years into that name, First National, and in the end we decided that to actually move forward you have to take those risks, and that risk was to get out of that 20-year relationship and start a new one that was fractured at the beginning. So it was an interesting time, and there was a lot of sleepless nights over what the right thing to do was.
Especially when, as you say, the previous franchise owner for that group, for Raine and Horne, hadn't had success with business, and whether it was their own fault or whatever. Obviously, there's a real analysis that goes into that.
That's right.
To just discover exactly what's gone wrong, and you have to have quite a lot of self-confidence in what you're doing to make sure that you can overcome that and grow beyond.
That's right. That was one of the big factors.
So it's and I guess, did you sort of have all the information that you really, looking back at it now, was there any real surprise there that came out?
Look, there was a few surprises, but we relied on our reputation we'd built. We relied on our business philosophy and what we thought was the right thing to do. So we did have a few surprises, but at the end of the day, we had one person that we had an issue with, and the market accepted it quite well. They knew who we were. We weren't a representative of that old person who was in it, and we actually saw a growth from day one in making that call.
Wow.
So,
it'd be quite reaffirming.
Well, our figures ended up being a 20% increase by making that judgment call to switch to Raine and Horne.
Which is quite substantial on a 20-year-old company. Yeah.
Huge call.
Different if you're first or second year in, but
that's right.
It's quite a hard thing to do.
So it was Raine and Horne are quite unique where they're family owned. They're still run by the Raine family, Angus Raine. So they're a third generation family who've been around for over 135 years in Australia. So their whole philosophy fitted in with our family-based company as well.
Sure.
So it sort of went together really well. We deal with Angus Raine. We deal with a guy who owns the company, and it just worked from that point.
Was that part of the appeal to Raine and Horne in the first place, that it is very sort of personal driven?
It is. We could have joined other franchise groups that are around, but they're run by boards, they're public companies, or they're people boards, run by boards basically, but
Sure.
Raine and Horne wasn't. It was run by an individual.
Because real estate's one of those industries where it is very uniquely personal, isn't it? And I think you would find that, or I expect that your clients and your agents have their own clients and
That's right.
and everything as well. So,
Well, our business is built on personal contacts, on relationships with people. That's where a lot of our business comes from, repeat business, referral business. New business is harder to get than the business you already have. So it works for us to be more personable, and that's the type of people we have in the industry, people who like to talk to people.
So is that maybe part of what sort of smoothed that transition from franchise? Because you can take your clients with you. It's not, say, you're changing brands of coffee in a coffee shop.
That's right. Everything behind the scenes was the same. It's just we had a new image and a new logo out the front of the shop, basically. But that new logo gave us a lot more penetration into the market, gave us a lot broader coverage, gave us more of a presence in general for real estate. They're a very well-known name, Raine and Horne, so it helped us dramatically.
So if we fast forward, obviously it's been almost 10 years since the switch. How far have you grown in terms of personnel-wise, going from, say, 2011 to what you've got now?
Well, from 2011 till now, we've had another dramatic growth phase. We've actually amalgamated a lot of offices into our office. We've taken over a lot of businesses. Our staff, when we started originally, we had 3 staff and we were up to 35. And in that time, we then looked at another office, opening a second office, and we did that at East Gosford. And we saw that as a fairly strategic move for us because of the area that we cover, which actually goes out through that area to Green Point. So we've had a very high growth in both our property management numbers, staff numbers, office. We've redone the office now 3 times, I think, in that period of time. So we're just modifying everything all the time to suit our current situation.
Yeah, okay. And so the decision to open a second office in East Gosford, that was, is that based on sort of territorial limits that exist, or is it just more of an exposure thing?
No, it's not. We've got no restrictions on where we can trade through our current group. There was a couple of decisions behind that. 4 years ago or 5 years ago, our daughter and her husband came to us and wanted to get into the business as well. So those 2 degrees at university are a waste of money. But anyway, we move on from that. So they decided that they want to come back from Sydney and get involved in the business, which was good. So that allowed us to expand within our family and take that to East Gosford as well. So it was strategic for the business, but it was also an opportunity that we had now that our daughter Katie and Christian were involved, and that gave us that opportunity to expand safely and keep it within our family group.
That's really cool. So is there, now that you've got Katie in the business, is there did that change your perception on where the business is going to go?
Totally.
And sort of succession planning and that sort of thing?
That's right. It changed it 100%. Totally tipped it on its head. Our whole structure in our business was set up to when we retire, we're going to sell the business and retire. And when they expressed an interest in coming into the business, it then had to change us financially, a structure, everything about what we'd set up needed to be reinvented. So it took us a lot, and we're still doing it. We're still changing things around.
Of course.
It's only been 5 years, and we've got 25 years, 30 years behind that to change around. So it's a great thing. It's good. We're happy that they're interested in wanting to do it. But it does change the whole business around dramatically. Yeah.
And obviously you started 30 years ago with Sue in the business, and so it's always been very family oriented. How is the dynamic different from just when it was you two to having now your daughter and son-in-law in the business as well?
Well, it's taken a lot of adjustment from our path, because we make our judgments and changes discussing it at home. Sue runs the property management department, I run the sales department, so we all have our own boundaries.
Sure.
So we carry that through and try and stick to that plan to make this work. So when we introduced two other dynamics into the situation, it again has caused a lot of, not conflict, a lot of situations where we've had to rethink what we do, because we're now affecting other people more so than just how we want to do it. So it's been a very interesting progression.
One word for it.
Yeah, it's very positive. It's very good that they love it, they're into it, their actual knowledge is amazing, how fast they've adapted to it all. Christian came from a sales background in real estate before he got involved with us. Yeah. Katie had a degree in human resources, so she had a lot of people skills. So
certainly not wasted in your industry.
Oh, that's true. Yeah,
so you get some of that money back. Yeah. So do you think that bringing in, obviously, while it wasn't intentional, having Katie and Christian come into the business with a slightly different perspective and that sort of thing, has that helped you adapt to such an evolution in real estate, where we've gone from however you would have done business 30 years ago to what you're doing now?
Absolutely. Their knowledge of the technology now is far superior definitely to me.
Sure.
And so their ideas have come in and refreshed everything that we do and how we do it. Sue is very IT orientated as well. So we've actually remodeled the whole business around IT now. We started, would have started about 8-9 years ago, where we changed our software companies. Everything we do now is on the cloud, so we have no server-based technology any longer, which is very expensive to have.
Yep.
So we've had to reassess our whole structure internally of how we do things. So the technology and their knowledge of technology has really helped us get to where we are today. So It's been very good.
So, I mean, obviously systemization and process is really critical for a business like this. And especially on, say, the rentals side, where there's a lot of moving parts, but maybe not quite such a revenue per account. Is how important has that process played in making rental roles, or rental contracts a profitable part of the business?
Well, it plays a very important part. Since the day we started, when we first bought the business, we didn't have a rent roll. It was purely a sales office. So our whole drive from day one was to build our rent roll. That rent roll carries us through times like they are today, through all the recessions we've had. That gives us the financial support to sustain our business. Without that, we would struggle a lot. So the only way you can make money from property management is by volume. You have to have a high number. The reality is that offices don't make money out of owning a rent roll if they're under 300 managements. It doesn't work. They have to get over that critical mass point and then build to other critical mass points and then change how management structure is done internally using technology to make it effective and profitable.
Yeah, okay. And so on the other side of business, we have property sales, obviously. And from my understanding of real estate, it is very agent-driven, where you can bring an agent into the business and they may have really good contacts, really good relationships with existing vendors. Does that play a consideration when you're bringing in agents?
It does, but more importantly is a culture of that, the person coming into our office. If they're a multi-billion-dollar salesperson, unless they've got the right attitude, they're worthless. They're not worth having. I'd rather have a good culture in the office, whether it's property management or sales, and have somebody that isn't the number one in Australia, but is a very good, well-rounded person who can consistently produce and have a good backing of their relationship with people and work within our culture that we want to set. So that's more important to us than the high roller.
Yeah, that makes sense. I suppose if they don't fit, then it becomes
destroy
counterproductive.
the rest of the business.
So how do you find a balance between sort of in-office competitiveness and no doubt in sales there is a little bit of competitiveness,
Of course.
but also a pat on the back for a job well done?
Yeah. Look, a lot of salesmen are driven by ego. It's money or ego that drives a salesperson. That's basically what it comes down to. And if you can control the ego to a point, you can get it sorted out. But competition is good. As long as the rules are set and everybody knows what's happening and there's nobody that actually tries to do things that are deceptive to other people, competition is great. It's what we all thrive on because we all want to win the deal. We all want to make the sale. But if everybody's on the same level playing field, it works out well.
Yeah, okay. So it's competitive, but you've got to play by the rules at the same time.
Yeah, you've got to play by the rules. It's the same with everything. The rules are there for a reason.
Yeah.
And if you do something to somebody, you've got to expect the same thing back. And the beauty of us is that I'm there all the time. I work 6 days a week. If we have an issue, every issue is taken on board. We listen to it and a decision is made and we moved on. That's the end of it. So we have fairly strict but simple rules in place.
So it sounds like maybe that HR degree, it really
She's
really
needed. Yeah.
It really is. It really is, pivotal to the business. And I think
it is. Yeah.
From the outside looking in, we think real estate and we think property sales and that sort of thing. But from what you're saying, the culture is really foundation to your success.
It is.
So is there ever a time where that sort of took a misstep and you had to sort of recalibrate things and bring it back in line?
Absolutely. Yeah. No, we recalibrate our business all the time. We're constantly moving, constantly changing, and that happens to the staff. We make bad decisions that simply employ the wrong people. It's not what we thought, not what we expected. So we do have to make those decisions, and it's something that evolves on a weekly basis, really. So it's very important to keep things moving smoothly and that culture strong in the office.
And so I guess that that sort of personal, cultural perspective really extends even to your clients pretty broadly as well. Because I can imagine that when your average person is selling their property, it's one of the biggest things that they're doing financially in their life. So what sort of, or how important is that cultural role, especially for your agents where you are, where they're representing your brand and your offices? How does that sort of extend through and how important is that?
Well, it's probably the number one rule. Most of our agents that work with us have been with us for a long time. We've got 14 years, 17 years, 20 years. Probably our newest staff member would be probably 3 years. So we have the idea that you've got to present yourself to the public and you've got to be able to walk down the street and talk to people that you sold the property to or sold the property for,
sure, and
quite happily discuss it. There's no room in our industry for the cowboys. They've gone years ago. So your reputation and your integrity are probably the most important parts of salespeople today.
Because I suppose, especially in property where the value of property being sold can be vastly different, and so the net commission on offer is vastly different based on that
Correct.
value as well. How important is it to keep track of the small guys and not let the $300,000 sale go over the $3 million sale?
That's right. Every sale is important because even if it's a $300,000 sale, it might be that person, it's all they have. So it's extremely important that they get the best service and looked after as much as a $3 million sale, because the numbers are different, sure, but the behind it is the same people with the same issues, the same problems, the same stress levels. Selling a house is extremely stressful. So it's irrelevant of the number because, those people have the same impact.
Interesting. Yeah, no, I think it's a really, as you say, the emotions that the seller has are probably the same irrespective of the dollar value.
And two, a person, 300,000 might be all they have in the whole world. And that's just as important as a person who's got $4 or $5 million. Of
course, yeah.
So there's no difference between them. It's just the numbers are different.
So switching gears a little bit, wouldn't mind touching on, say, social media and the impact of digital on real estate.
Should have brought Katie along.
Hey, maybe there's a second episode in that. More just in terms of how much of a disruption or how much of an impact has that had in how you do day-to-day business? Because, 30 years ago, the internet was in its infancy.
Yeah, didn't exist.
Yeah.
It's funny, we've been in the Central Coast Express local newspaper for probably close to 30 years. Full page, double page spreads every week in that paper, and they were very expensive. Last time we advertised in the paper would probably have been 3 years ago that we cut that paper, and now we rely totally on the internet. So all of our marketing now is done through the internet and through social media. They're really our two marketing points. You've got to get that right because it's a very expensive way to market properties nowadays. The papers got out of selling newspapers; they got into running the internet. Yep. And they're making their money up. The losses there. So it's a very expensive way to do business now. But the papers, magazines, as far as our industry goes, that's dead.
So in terms of, say, new business acquisition or, say, inquiries on a sale property, how does it change, say, when you had ads in the paper and people had to pick up a phone versus, say, now where it's just a quick bash inquiry through real estate? Does it help qualify leads or does it just create more volume?
Creates more volume, but the hardest part is that you need to talk to people. It's easy to flick an email, we do it all the time. You get an email inquiry, you answer it straight away, but you don't have that interaction with the people. So you lose a lot finding out what the person really wants, because a lot of properties might spark their interest, but that's usually not what they end up buying.
Sure.
So it's a different dynamic to what it used to be. It used to be all on the phone or in person, or they'd come to the office. We used to have a tremendous amount of walk-in buyers come to our real estate offices. That doesn't happen any longer. We converse on the phone or via email. That's where most of it is done. So it's changed everything as far as how an agent handles an inquiry, and we've still got to try and get that one-on-one.
Yeah, of course. So in terms of, obviously real estates are always prominently positioned in, strip mall or really convenient locations, properties in the front windows, all that sort of thing. If there's much lower walk-in traffic, is that more of a perception thing or does it still play a part in that?
It still plays a part, and it plays a part for different parts of our business. Rentals are still very much they pay their rent online and it's all done automatically. We haven't taken cash for probably 15 years, but they still have a lot of interaction on a one-on-one basis with issues they have or signing new leases. So that your face to the public is still very important from that. Sales, it's not so much because it's all done over the internet, but we still have a lot of people that come into both offices walking past and see something that's of interest, and that'll spark their inquiry. So.
Yeah, okay. Also, keeping on the digital realm, thinking about competition, we saw, say, an online competitor like Purple Bricks come in with very radically different commission structures and sales processes. How obviously they've exited the market again now and didn't really get a foothold. Do you see much happening in that space that sort of impacts you, or is this where the relationships come into play?
Well, they have. Purple Bricks, prime example. There are others coming into the market. They're always there. You've got a lot of people who are running real estate agents out of their sheds, out of their houses. So we have a lot of disruptors into our industry. But it does still come back to people are selling an asset, their biggest asset in their life. Are they going to want to deal with somebody just on the internet who hasn't got an address, who they can't go and see? A lot of it's still got to be personable. So they've still got to meet the people and have the trust in them to do the job that they want done with their biggest asset they've got. So, technology certainly plays a high percentage of it, but the person side of it is still extremely important. They've got to have the trust in that person to do the job. And with a model like Purple Bricks, where they discount their commission to such a degree, you pay for what you get, and that's been proven. That's the bottom line.
And so there may be a market for the no-frills option, but for someone who wants to make sound decisions and really try and get maximum return on their sale.
That's right.
That's where you see that.
They need to do that. If you go to the cheapest, it's the same in life for every product you buy. You can always buy cheap things, but if you want a quality, you have to pay more. And for that quality, you usually have a better negotiator and somebody who's more skilled in what they do, someone who trains all the time and is not focused on what their commission is rather than delivering the right result for their client. And the big difference is when you're only charging a small amount of money, you need to pump them through. Like, you need to have a high volume to stay in business. And if they don't have that volume, which means less service, quicker turnover, they won't stay in business. And that's been proven with these companies. They just don't last because they can't afford to actually service their clients.
Yeah, I think it was an interesting thing seeing them come in, and an even more interesting thing seeing them exit.
That's right.
And it happened all pretty rapidly, and the TV ads were still running. And
that's right, when they were gone.
Exactly. Yeah. But it all had to play out. So.
Yeah. Look, competition is good. There's nothing wrong with competition. I don't mind if we've got 50 agents or 100 agents. It's how those agents perform is what the difference is to whether business is successful or not.
Yep.
Same in life for everything. You can have 20 people selling the same product. It's how they deliver it is what makes a difference.
And so obviously we're based on the Central Coast, and an hour away from the CBD. Who, for anyone listening that doesn't know where that is, Sydney CBD. We should clarify. Obviously, the Central Coast has grown exponentially over the last few decades. Mm-hmm. How instrumental has that been in property developments, property sales, and sort of the on-flow? So the available business is there, even if the competitors are. How much of a role has that overall industry growth played a part?
The Central Coast, in particular, Gosford, is seen a boom in the amount of construction of units, and particularly units. That's where most of the construction has been. Competition in that field is quite strong. There's a lot of Sydney agents and a lot of developers who are selling their own product. It's changed dramatically what we've done and what the future is going to be for Gosford, which is good. It's very positive for it. But I used to refer to Gosford as a twilight zone. Like, nothing ever happens. Everything missed Gosford and for years and years. And it's taken a couple of people in particular. So John Singleton, he's had the courage to put his hand up and actually do something, and that you can see what he's done. It has been a great benefit for Gosford, and it's followed by the government with the tax office and work cover. They've certainly put the commercial structure behind Gosford as well. We just need a progressive council to take it to the next level.
Yeah,
that's where we struggle.
Well, we might leave that for a different conversation.
Yeah, exactly.
So in terms of, as you say, John Singleton, probably referencing Bonathon Tower in Man Street, and you do look at that construction going up, and it really is built for a decade's time, and it's trying to drive things forward.
That's right.
How pivotal do you see investors and developers being in any regional area like that?
Well, we actually are quite a unique area. If you think about how we're positioned, we're an hour to Sydney, we're an hour to Newcastle, we're on the coast, we've got every aspect of lifestyle anybody could want, from the beaches to the parks to the waterways, and access to Sydney and Pittwater and the Hawkesbury River. It's a very unique location. So we can satisfy a lot of demand for that uniqueness of our lifestyle. And our prices are so cheap compared to Sydney, and we're only an hour away. That access to Sydney is getting better all the time. We've got the new freeway opening soon, later on this year.
Yep.
There's a lot of our trains are getting better. Everything is improving. So we are in a very unique situation.
I mean, it's certainly a lot more dense, and the freeway traffic to Sydney, the commute traffic to Sydney is much more significant than it was.
Oh, absolutely.
10 years, 20 years ago. But then as technology evolves and certainly at the moment with COVID playing out, a lot of people are finding that maybe they can work from home.
Mm-hmm.
Do you see that as maybe a catalyst for further growth on the coast because the commute isn't a problem?
Yeah. It will play a big part as well. We were lucky. We were actually one of the first areas to take on the NBN, and that started the change for the Central Coast, and that's grown over the last 10 years where people can quite comfortably work from home, and it's a big part of what we see. Commuters, I think there's last count about 40,000 a day travel to Sydney. A lot of them, especially after this COVID, will now work from home at least some days a week. So it's probably good.
I think that's an interesting thing about, some days a week. I know quite a number of people that I know that do work on the coast from home. They maybe have a job share, or not a job share, but a part-time work from home component. So maybe they still get into the office for an hour or two. So it's not the same as being in Coffs Harbour where you're 5 hours from Sydney.
That's right.
It's near enough but far enough that you can still go to the beach on the weekend.
Yeah, so it's still only an hour away. So they can be in the city, do what they have to do in their office for a couple of days a week and work from home for 3 days. So we have that versatility, which a lot of areas don't have. And we have the NBN, so we have good communications. So there's, again, we're perfectly placed to take more people in from that direction.
So obviously when you're in a high development and high growth sort of area, do you find that those long-term relationships can evolve in ways that you hadn't expected as well? Maybe someone turns to, property development or investing, or, their interaction with property changes over time just as the market evolves?
Oh, definitely. You have people who started out as passive investors who then look to some sort of development, maybe on a very small scale. Then they want to progress a bit further into larger scale developments. We have a lot of that, particularly in places like East Gosford, where they might come up to building 3 or 4 townhouses on a site. Then they develop further. So over the years, we've seen people who had literally no interest in real estate become developers as they are today and are quite successful. So yeah, a lot of people have changed, and the area, we have a lot of varying properties. So whether you fix up an existing house and put it back on the market to resell, duplexes, granny flats, subdivisions, townhouses, villas, units. Central Coast is huge on the scope for different developing real estate.
And as you said, the tax office came into the Gosford recently as well. Did that sort of, was there any notable surge that comes with that, or is that?
I wish I could say yes, but no, it wasn't. We had the tax office, we've had the Department of Finance, and we've helped WorkCover. All of those people are mainly commuters. There's a lot of people that still commute back to Sydney from there. So as far as growth for local as residents, I don't think it's had a major impact at all. More beneficial to the cafes and restaurants, which is great because it supports the economy through Gosford in that area. We've seen most of our growth in housing probably come through the hospital system with the redevelopment of the Gosford Hospital with doctors and nurses and support staff for that. A lot of people have moved to the area for that reason. So it's probably been the major catalyst for our change in our population.
Okay. It's interesting. If we fast forward, say, another 20 years in real estate, obviously thinking about how far it's... I'm not saying that we'll be having this conversation in 20 years' time. Hopefully sunning yourself on the sand. Yeah. Given how far it's come in, say, the last 20 or 30 years, do you see a time where people are so comfortable with a internet-based transaction that you could be showcasing properties regardless of geography and without physical inspection of properties taking place at all?
Well, that has come up now. We're dealing with that at the moment with virtual tours and inspections with the COVID. Sure, a lot of people will do it, but, we have sold properties to overseas clients off the net, off photos, off videos. But most Australians still want to touch and feel before they make such a large purchase.
Sure.
They get a lot of inquiry. They do all the research, which the internet provides. But at the end of the day, I think they still want to go on and feel the property, look at it, get a feel for the sense of the property. A lot of property character is in the house, and the feel of the house is very important to people as much as what the bricks and mortar are. The area, the location, the feel of the neighbourhood. They're all visible on the internet, but you don't know it until you get there to feel it.
Sure.
And I think that will still be the driving focus behind the future of selling real estate.
Do you find there's a difference even now between, say, an investor versus a owner-occupier in that purchase process, where
Absolutely.
an investor's more willing to just go off the specs?
That's right. Investors are money. It's all about money, expenditure, return, net return, outgoings. So they're a lot more clinical in what they do, and they look at numbers. When you're talking to owner-occupiers, it's more the feel, the lifestyle, the house or the unit. They all want to know that they'll be comfortable living in that situation. So there'd be a big differences between the two. We manage properties for people all over the world who have never been to the properties.
Sure.
And as long as the numbers are right, investors don't have a problem. But owner-occupiers, different ballgame.
They want to see how the light plays through the window, or
They do.
what colour they can paint
They want
the
to see where the
kitchen.
sun comes up, where
Yep.
it sets, what the breezes are, what the neighbourhood is like, the shopping. There's a lot of factors go into why people make a decision, particularly when we have a high concentration of people moving to our area from Sydney. A lot of our buyers are from the upper North Shore, northern shore of Sydney, and they see the Central Coast as an extension of the North Shore. So they want the same feel and the same facilities that they have in that corridor to come through. So they very much want to know everything about the area before they make that commitment.
Of course. Interesting. So we're coming up on time here, and I've got a few quick questions that I wouldn't mind asking.
Okay.
And they don't need a long answer, but
Short ones, okay.
see how, well, they can be long. Maybe it's in
Yeah.
depth, but we'll see how we go. So I've got three of them. The first one is the single most important thing that you've learnt for success in business.
Be adaptable.
Adaptable.
Change.
Elaborate, or that is the short answer?
You need to change. You need to reassess all the time. You need to change with the market. You need to be able to foresee what's going to happen in the market and judge. So if I've learned anything, and I've been doing it for a long time, we have to change.
Pretty good answer. Can't beat that one. So if you had your time again, is there a decision that you've made that you would have totally changed over?
No, I don't. Look, probably we could have made better business decisions. You always get things wrong, and you'd be crazy if you said you didn't. So there's probably a few of them along the line, but again, you got to live with what you've done. There's no point looking backwards, and particularly in business, if you stuff it up, get over it, move on, fix it, and don't do it again.
Interesting. And if there was one person in business anywhere in the world, alive or dead, that you'd love to have lunch with, who would it be?
Oh, God. I can think of one smart-ass answer, but who would I...
It can be a smart-ass answer.
Donald Trump, he'd destroy it very quick.
Hey, that'd be an interesting
It
conversation,
would be
wouldn't it?
interesting. Geez, I don't know. It's a very hard question. I've had a lot of good mentors over the years, a lot of good people that have given me a lot of good advice. And probably those people have been lost now because of their age or they're out of the industry. And that's probably the biggest loss I've had is those people to talk to about different things. But putting it down to one person, I'd have to get back to you next series.
Maybe we'll stick with Trump. So just out of that spawned another question, actually, which is more of a standard question. How important have you found the role of mentors in business and in the success overall?
Oh, extremely important. It's nothing's better than to talk to somebody who's done it before and find out what they did and how they reacted to a certain situation and how they came out of it. And that's very important in our business and any, I imagine. So why try and reinvent the wheel? It's been done before. No matter how clever you are, somebody's done it better than what you have. So I think the most important part about being in a franchise like we are is that I get to talk to other people who are successful in our industry, more so than the franchise. It's the people that are more important.
Yeah, I think there's some interesting lessons learned there, and you can't always ask your customer what they want. Sometimes you have to tell them.
A lot of times you get it wrong, how you deliver it. But if you speak to people who have done it before, you can often just pick up that little gem that takes you through.
Amazing. All right, well, we're coming up on time, and I've really appreciated this conversation. Geoff Tilden from Raine and Horne at Gosford and East Gosford. And website address for anyone who wants to check you guys out.
rhgosford.com.au.
Amazing. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Great. Thanks, mate.
There you have it. I hope you really enjoyed this episode, and if you did, please like it, share it, or leave us a review on your favourite platform. It helps us show more of this content to people just like you.